Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? If you're new to the page, my name is Charles Zavala. I'm an immigration lawyer. Our office is Zavala Texas Law. We're located here in Texas, but we can help you no matter where you are in the USA or even if you're abroad. So normally I do videos about immigration, criminal defense, small business stuff, and I try to kind of synthesize a lot of what's going down and give it to you in an easy, practical format. So if you like this video or you like videos like this, feel free to like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Today is, let me see here, the exact date is January 21st, 2025. So Trump became president. Yesterday was his inauguration. And since then, he has signed a bunch of executive actions that affect lots of different areas of law. But I'm going to talk to you the ones specifically regarding immigration. Because for a long time, he's been saying this is going to happen and people have been waiting to see what's happening. So I have my notes over here. I'm going to kind of go through the little bullet points and why I think they're important, how I think people will be affected, and et cetera, et cetera. So the first things first is, what is an executive action order? So whenever a president, he can issue out essentially what they're called executive orders on his own will. He doesn't need Congress's approval. He doesn't need anything like that. However, anytime a president does that and it's something that the Congress doesn't like, they do have the chance to fight it. And that's most recently we saw that happening with DACA. We actually had a new ruling this past Friday where it started off as executive order and then it got fought out and ultimately they lost it in the court. So first things first, Trump declared a national emergency at the border, okay? So what that essentially means is all immigration that's coming into the border is essentially going to be put on pause for a little while. This is going to allow also for the deployment of armed forces and National Guard to go on the border. He's been saying he's going to do this for a long time, ultimately because there's a lot of people who are crossing over the river, and they said they need more quote-unquote troops, but they need more personnel down there to help handle all of that. So that's the first thing we're going to see happen. As part of that, there is also something called CBP1. This was an app on the phone. So what happened is this. In the past few years, a lot of people in the headlines, they've been talking about in immigration, how people are coming to the USA to seek what's called asylum. Okay? So a lot of people were coming over without permission, undocumented, illegally. And what's happening is the Biden administration said, look, there's too many people coming. Let's create this application on a phone called CBP1, where it's for all these people who are coming to the USA. You download the app, you make a profile, you apply essentially for asylum on the app, and then they will tell you, okay, please stay there. We'll give you an interview date, or we'll give you a date to come to the border, and then we'll process you in. So this was a way to try to kind of slow down the flow of people who were crossing over illegally. Lots of people were using CBP1. People would get appointments. They'd be able to come into the country while their case is pending. And once they're in the USA, they're allowed to apply for a work permit after 180 days. That's a really big one, being able to get a work permit after 180 days. So now CBP1, it's done. So Trump ended that. So anyone, I'm assuming, who had a process pending or an interview pending, that's now going to be nixed. I assume what Trump's going to do is kind of do just like he did before, the Remain in Mexico, or ultimately, well, I guess he did do this. He reinstated it. The Remain in Mexico, for all these people who are trying to come to the USA to apply for asylum, he's saying, look, you still have the right to apply for asylum. You can still all do that, but you have to remain in Mexico while you do that. We're not going to let you come into the country and await your case. And this is for multiple reasons. One of the things he's saying is there's too much of a backlog. All the immigration courts, and this is true, there's way too many backlogs. There's not enough immigration judges to handle the giant flow, and that's why cases are being pushed back to multiple years. Second, he's saying that the vetting that's happening, whenever they're letting these people in, it's not enough, right? They're letting in a lot of people who have criminal history and just negative effects that he doesn't want in the USA. So by him putting this Remain in Mexico, everyone's kind of frozen there. This is not good for the immigrants. Unfortunately, we did see a lot of negative things that happened with the Remain in Mexico, like a lot of cartels are taking advantage of people. There are a lot of campsites, kind of extortion, things like that. But this is ultimately what's happening right now. Let me see here. This is kind of a friend. He's ending what's called the catch and release. What catch and release means this is someone crosses over the border illegally and they get apprehended by Border Patrol or Customs and Border Patrol. What they would do is they would take them to the base. They would get all their information. They would get where do they live, runs a few checks on them, and then they would release them and say, you have to show up to court in X amount of months. There are some immigrants who would come and then go to court the date, and then there's a lot who never show up to court. So that's kind of the problem that the Trump administration was saying. This catch and release, what's the point of releasing them if they're never going to show up again? So that's also done. So I'm assuming anybody that's being caught at the border or quickly close proximity to the border is either going to be held in detention or they're going to be removed back to Mexico. This is a big one, and I want to see, it's not so much immigration, but it does have to do with immigration. He designated criminal cartels as a terrorist group. So what's happened is there is a lot of cartel influence when they're transferring people across the border, right? These families pay these groups a lot of money to help transfer them across the border. So I do want to see what happens there. I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see. And then ending birthright citizenship. I don't want to get too into that yet because that is something that for 100% is going to be fought. So ultimately what happens is this: if you are born, as of now, if you are born in the USA, it doesn't matter whether your parents are here legally, illegally, you are a US citizen, right? That comes from the Constitution. So now the Trump administration is going to try to challenge that. And ultimately it's going to go to the Supreme Court. I know it is because it's a constitutional challenge. So we'll see what happens there. And let me see here. I think to me, those were the most important things that had to do with immigration. And remember, today's only day one. We'll see what happens. But in conclusion of everything I just said, the most important thing is he declared a national emergency at the border, which means more armed personnel are going to be down there to help prevent the flow of migration. 2 is also the end of CBP1. That's showing you he's taking a hard stance towards immigration, or he's taking a hard stance towards the asylum and the people who are coming over for asylum. The Remain in Mexico is now back in effect, and what that means is doesn't mean you cannot apply for asylum, but you apply from asylum while in Mexico. Ultimately, he's saying we don't want to have to deal with you during your process. You have to remain in Mexico. It doesn't matter what country you're from. If you're coming from South America, Central America, Mexico is the closest thing to the USA. That's where you have to apply. We'll see what happens. I mean, this is part of politics. It's part of immigration. We'll see what happens. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. You can call me, phone number on the screen. I'm watching this just as much as you guys, right? So this is always an ever-changing climate, and we'll see what happens. But if y'all need any assistance, please feel free to let us know. My name is Attorney Charles Zavala. We're here to help you with anything you need. Thank you. Bye-bye.